welcome to Liberty Contract Podcast. We have some special announcement to begin with today. We have our app called Liberty Contract officially available to download, and a link will be sent to each one of our audiences in an email newsletter on Tuesday. In addition to our discussions, our experts are breaking down documents and going over crucial details that are needed to make cognizance with the Admiralty law and other processes. In our subscription version of the podcast, we provide a further breakdown of all of the documents and go over a cohesive strategy with which you may approach your own individual situations. If you need more information about pricing, please check your inbox. And if you are already subscribed to our newsletter, click on the link in the description below. Well, hello, everyone. This is Luc Lalonde back here in the Liberty Contract Podcast with our in-house experts, John and Tarek, who are discussing the burning question we never got answer in grade school. What is money? Welcome to the show, John and Tarek. In the last episode, we went over a brief introduction of the both of you, and we had some questions about what it is that we are bringing to our audience, like sovereignty and admiralty law, and some brief descriptions of definitions and documents. This week, I had some questions for you both on the subject of money. Seeing that this is the most important subject never taught in schools, nor talked about at the dinner table, I want to interject and bring all our attention to this important topic. Let's dive straight into it, gentlemen. I know we have a lot of ground to cover, and I want both of your individual opinions on this subject matter so that our audience can get a comprehensive look into what is money. So, Tarek, we'll start with you today. Why was money invented?
Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Perfect. That's a bit of a loaded question that we're starting with. Why was money invented? I have done some preliminary research into it myself, and I've thought about it quite some time in in the different phases of my life that I've been from grade school to university and all that, interacting with money on a daily basis. And to me, it seems that money was invented to keep things fair. In the sense that if somebody is sharing some value with you, for instance, me, let's say, being an electrician or an engineer coming to do some work for you in your home because something doesn't work or something needs replacing, or you need to create a brand new module that will fit into your house or something to that effect, then as a compensation to have contract. And to have equity on equal footing. That's what equity really means, is to have equal footing in a transaction or a contract. I think that the money was invented for that reason.
How about you, John? Do you have anything to add to why was money invented?
No, I think Tar covered it. The only thing I will add is that it's a ruler, it's a tape measure for value, so that when we add value to a contract or we define our contracts in value, we have something that we can use as a tangible and consistent way of measuring what something's worth.
Awesome. Just to continue on that, John, why is money important in the context of contracts?
I thought about this a lot over the last couple of days, and I think it really depends on the contract. I think money is important for or in the context for contracts, in that it gives everything a defined value. Whether it's dollars or euros or any other form of, any sort of government regulated currency or really anything for that matter. It's something that the parties can agree to and attach a worth to their specific situation within the contract and their specific, the terms that they have to follow or meet within the contract. And the money gives everything a little bit of value so that we can express the equity and the what's the other term I'm looking for? The equity and the worth of that contract within the context of whatever the parties are agreeing to.
Awesome. Do you have anything to add to that, Tarek?
Yeah, just one small thing that I'll add, and that is that in the context of rather for contracts, money in the Admiralty law functions as a seal of approval. It is something that we give kind of like an initiation to. It's really just IOUs or stamps or whatever it is that we're using in that contract. And because it's Admiralty law or maritime law, then it has dual purpose. It acts as an initiator of the contract, meaning that if you cancel the money on that contract, then it means that the money has been spent and that the contract is in effect and valid. And also, like John said, in the context of what the worth of that contract itself is, then it functions as a measure of value of what the two parties are agreeing to.
Great answers. Funny question. What can qualify as money nowadays? I mean, we all know, we all think that fiat currency is money. I mean, we've been kind of duped there. What really qualifies as money nowadays?
John, you may want to answer that one first, or should I go?
Anything.
Okay, I'll answer in the historical perspective. Even before the bronze coins, the copper coins, silver coins, gold coins, or anything else that the nations have had before, the modern money exchange, which is the fiat currency and cryptocurrencies that we have in today's day and age. Honestly, any real commodity, any real world commodity, any real time commodity could be considered as money. For the longest time, seeds, rice, barley, wheat bushels, chickens, goats, anything was considered as money. Not because, and this was a famous saying by one of the religious scholars that, why don't you give a goat as a salary? And in case that the goat dies, then you what are you going to tell your wife, that the salary died? Well, I would like to correct him here and say it's not about the salary, it's about the perceived value. So goat has more perceived value than paper money, clearly. So yes, you would lose a lot more if the goat died versus if your IOU was drenched in rain or your promissory note got destroyed, you can just go and make another one. But really, anything can really qualify as money if the two parties agree, and that has to do with the contract itself. And a lot of the times, people mistake the nature of money with these different methods that are IOUs. These are not exactly what money is. Money has many different species, which we'll talk about, I hope, in the next few minutes. But I'll turn the table over to John here.
I agree with you. When I was trying to answer that question, I found a lot of different things over time that have qualified as money. I mean, there's evidence of people using baseball cards as money, or lumber as money, because it's a value exchange. And if it's valued, if you're trading, say, a bushel of wheat for a 2x4, then if you value everything according to the 2x4, then your 2x4 becomes money.
pretty much.
So, would you say that we've heard the saying, "Time is money"? Is that a accurate saying?
Absolutely. Time is the greatest money of all. I think that's the one that you cannot respend. So that's the
Yep.
one that you have to be very careful with where you spend that one.
So,
Most
I
important.
mean, go ahead. Oh, the
No,
most
I'm
important.
finished. Yeah.
Yeah. And when you said talking about the goat dying, I mean, it's the opposite. We hope that goat has a baby, and then you double your value, right? I mean, so
Pretty
really,
much.
it's really a change of value. It's an exchange of value. That's what money is. And over time, there's been just a whole bunch of different ways of using that time. So would a barter system be valued as money? Because barter, you're a barter system. You're changing a value for a service for so your time for an item or time for time.
Now, rich people still do this to this day. They do barter for barter. They don't always do IOUs because they understand what real money is, and it has to do. It goes back as far back as gold and silver. And gold and silver, I mean, they're still in use today in some degree. So, really, the barter system it has always been valid. It never really went anywhere. Countries do this still to this level, and they trade sometimes in gold and silver, sometimes in oil, sometimes in entertainment, sometimes in fruits. So this has been going on for a while. The only event that is the most complicated part of this entire mechanism is the transportation aspect of it, which not everybody can do right by themselves due to lack of resources.
What about you, John? What do you think of bartering as is that accurate?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think bartering is definitely. I mean, it's still used. It's used all over the world. It's used. I mean, I don't. I can't think of a country that wouldn't use bartering because if even if you just exchange, say, a pen for a notepad, somebody's got a notepad and you want the notepad and you got a pen and they want the pen, then that's barter. That's a barter contract. So yeah, in that case, your money or your pen or your notebook become the money to evaluate the contract and create the agreement between the parties that they can agree on.
Great. Well, that's great information. So let's go back to Tarek here. You were talking about species of money. What are species of money?
Well, I think before we even talk about the species of money is maybe we should talk about why are we not taught about money.
Well, okay, perfect. Why isn't money taught in schools? Why isn't money taught by the bankers and the governments? I mean, I think that's I've never heard of any courses that are you take economics, you could take you could become an accountant, but you're only doing math, you're only learning processes and procedures, but they don't teach us about money. So why is that?
Luke, thank you for that question. John, do you want to get started on this one? I'm pretty sure you have some really good ones.
I think it's a pretty straightforward answer. If they taught you what money was, if you learned how to, honor your contracts and stay within the boundaries of your contract in school, then that would kind of defeat the purpose of school. They don't want you to tell you the rules of the game so that you don't understand how the game is played. As soon as you learn how that game is played or what the rules are for that game, all of a sudden you either don't want to play the game or you decide that you want to change the rules. And when it comes to the school, they want you brainwashed, they want you controlled, they want you ignorant, submissive, and confused. And if they don't teach you what money is, then it's pretty easy to maintain all that disinformation, I suppose.
That's all across the board, not only about money.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Well, I mean, It's not a very, like John said, it's not a very complicated answer, and my phone is blowing up because there's a through the audiences who are wanting to watch this, but I feel like they're probably not on the right link which I sent earlier. Anyways, so it has to do with really just selfishness of the human condition, and I use the word human on purpose. I did not use mankind. These people are literally monsters or animals, according to the Black's Law Dictionary. I forget the edition. I think it's the 5th edition. I'm not sure. But according to that dictionary's definition, human or humanity is a monster, a derivative of mankind. So these people who are essentially psychopaths or have high neuroticism, they create these systems where everybody else has to play with their rules. Now, granted, maybe they had some kind of a traumatic event in their life, and who doesn't? But to them, their circumstances were so special that they got together with the rest of the neurotic people, and they created a rule for everybody else that they had to pass through the schooling system or whatever it was that they wanted us to pass through, because one reason or another. The main one is that they wanted to edify themselves and be worshipped. Honestly, that's really what it comes down to: worship, edification. They have more gold and silver and all the other resources that they could possibly imagine. So what else could it be that they want? To me, that's what it feels like. That they want everybody to be a machine or a part of the cog in the system, and edify them, worship them. You see this going on with all the celebrities. What is happening with all these different channels like Hollywood, and then their derivatives like Bollywood and Lollywood and so many other woods, that they have celebrities and celebrity worship and then hero worship, whatever that goes into, and this has been played to the highest effect in various religions of the world, such as the Greek religion or the Nordic religion or the Roman religion, and so many other religions that have overplayed their hand in creating this sacrificial hero or an scapegoat that you must pay a teething or more than a teething than to keep the system going. And so a lot of these smart people have figured out, although they're neurotic, they're pretty smart, they've figured out that, hey, look, these people are willing to still pay us if we dance a little bit on the stage. And so that's what they're doing. This is really, there's nothing really behind the smoke and mirrors. It's just them wanting to perpetuate the system, whatever the system may be. So in a nutshell, I think that's the right answer.
Well, that's a good nutshell. I mean, I also believe that with the school system, they get to filter the people that they really want to continue, like the right doctors that kind of like to flirt around the gray area, the people that are kind of rebellious to, the teachers. They want the people that are strong and strong-willed, or they also like the other ones that are very good at what they do and throw them in think tanks. So they can kind of filter according to your grades, your attendance, your participation, and especially when you get to the college and university levels, your doctorates, everything, they can kind of cherry pick, who they can, pass the torch on to. So, I mean, that's why they don't educate us on money or anything else throughout the system. They don't educate us on anything. We have televisions and screens in every household in our pockets, yet the information is not out there for the general public. So that being said, can we talk about the species now of money? Because I think it's going to lead into the next question. What are the
excuse me? Yeah, 100%. We can talk about the species of money, and I'll let John kind of list them out. But what I would say is that the main ones that we all know are debentures and bonds, the IOUs, the currency notes that everybody sees, and promissory notes, really, and we classify them as money, but they're really just debt instruments. But this, this question can have several different answers. depending on who you ask. But really, it's just that which holds value. And if something that you're exchanging with another person does not hold value, then unfortunately, it cannot be classified as money. So, John, can you please list a few of them? I've listed most of them, I think, but I'll let you kind of get into more of them.
Yeah, I don't know. There's so many. You said bonds and debentures, promissory notes, checks, money orders, drafts, bills of exchange, SDRs, which are special drawing rights, and currencies, and yeah, anything, basically anything that holds its value. So even gold or silver can be valued as money. I mean, coffee beans if you want.
Right on. Yeah.
Well, so to follow up with that question, what are some documents that our audience can go look at to understand, more about money?
Do you want to answer this, Eric?
Yeah, go right ahead. Go right ahead, please.
Okay. To learn more about money, I would say probably some of the best ones that I found are actually straight up printed by banks and treasuries. One of the ones that I first found was the Modern Money Mechanics that was issued by the Federal Reserve. And then, I mean, when you really get into it, you can go into the Bank Act of Canada and the Bills of Exchange Act of Canada. And there's all kinds of information in there, although it's not really written in English. So it's a little bit hard to understand. You kind of have to have a dictionary right beside you to figure out what the definitions of those words are.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not, let's see what else. Yeah, I think that's probably the best place to start. Did you want any other ones you wanted to add on to there, Tyler?
Yeah, I think a really important document that everybody should be really reading, and it's a little bit of a deviation. I would say the Uniform Commercial Code. You still have to read that because it explains the contracts and how the value is exchanged. So that's important. That's the basis of what money is in the Admiralty and the Maritime Law. And then the Secret Banker's Manual, Top Secret Banker's Manual by Tom Schauf. That one's what a phenomenal book. I mean, it exposes so much about the money system and how the credit card companies perpetuate this unbelievable scam on the people of this world, and how the banks are using your promissory notes to, well, essentially steal your money, which happened to John not too long ago.
Yeah.
So great book.
Speaking of promissory notes, I mean, we talk about it pretty, openly, but what is the difference for the audience between money and currency? Isn't money the same as currency? A lot of people have that question.
We have to look at the historical perspective of what money and currency is. Every single paper currency that has ever existed in mankind's different variations or of the experiment that is the nation states, the value of paper money has always gone down to the logical value, which is zero. We see this everywhere. Weimar, Germany, where the National Socialist Party held full reign during the end of World War I and the beginning of World War II, and also the end of that, there was 150% inflation. And that's just mild numbers. We see Venezuela, the Venezuelan currency had 1,000,000% inflation. Zimbabwe prints $1 trillion notes. So it has to do with the correct definition of what currency is versus money. Money holds its value. So if you put gold, if you dig a hole and you put a bar of gold in it, and you come back after 1,000 years, maybe even 1,000,000 years later, it will still be gold. You can take it out and use it as a valuable commodity of foreign exchange. But you cannot do the same thing with paper currency. It decays faster. It does not hold the same weight. And so, and not just that, but also the debt-based system creates this fleeting effect, which is known as inflation, which is a hidden tax in all in of itself, which depreciates the value of the money, or the rather the currency that we all of us hold. So no, currency and money are not the same. Currency loses value over time, which is self-evident, and money holds its value over time, which is also self-evident.
Great answer. Do you have anything to add to that, John?
Yeah, I would say that I like that answer. I would say that currency is a subset of money, like a species of money, but currency is pretty much limited to the coins and the bills that are printed and minted. You know, things that are printed and minted are currency, and they're species of money, but money and currency are not necessarily the same thing. I mean, like Tarek said with the Bolivar, there's been so much inflation that yes, it's a currency, but it's not money because it's not really holding its value anymore. You know, after you have $1 million, or sorry, 1,000,000% worth of inflation, then what's left? You know, there's no value there. So your currency is now essentially gone. You know, and it's still a species of money, but it's not. It doesn't hold the value the same way that gold or silver, or even a piece of lumber, or your bushel of wheat does.
Excellent. So just to follow up with that question then, so once they stop this obviously paper money fiat currency system, and they're going into the digital currency, what is it going to be the same? The value is just going to go down and down and down, or is there more to say about that?
I don't think it can go anywhere but down, because just like the fiat currency that we have since, what is it, in the US, I think it's 1972. And in Canada, I think it was 1971 or 73, not quite 72, but around the same time, when both countries went off the gold standard. Now we have inflation. And I mean, we've already seen the starting effects of hyperinflation over the last couple of years. So I don't know. I kind of just lost my train of thought there. Anything you might have had?
Oh, but so basically what I was going with is that once they switch it over to a digital currency, is that system going to be the same, a debtor society, a debtor, like something that loses its value all the time? Or is it because it won't be backed by anything like usual, or it's just going to be like digits?
It's going to be backed by an off switch that the government controls. So what value could it possibly hold?
Well, that's an important message. What do you think the dangers of that are? Well, I mean, our show is going to last 4 hours if we answer that question. So let's get back onto what is the main reason nations go bankrupt after adopting paper as money? Tarek, if you want to start that one.
That's a great question, man. You know, a lot of the philosophers in history have tried to answer that question, and in my opinion, what I have so far observed about what nation states have done is that they get greedy. They get greedy, and they try to self-emulate or cannibalize themselves. They get into this, oh, I must have more mentality. The same thing that happened in Babylon, where the economy was destroyed because everybody was just wanted more and more money instead of having to do more work and provide more value. Same thing happened with the Qing dynasty so many years ago in China, and elsewhere, the Kushan Empire in India. They adopted a form of that currency, and they went bankrupt completely, and they lost the war against the Persians. Why was that? Mainly because they got greedy. Everybody just gets greedy. I don't know if this is like a cycle that every nation goes through, but it really had to do with just that one feeling alone, that, oh, I must have more. You know, everybody has theirs. I don't have mine, and that's fair. That system in itself is very unfair and unjust when you don't have an equal distribution of all the wealth. I'm not a socialist, by the way. I'm just telling it as it is. So when you don't have equal distribution, or rather an equitable distribution of wealth across the nation, what happens is that people who don't have access to mobility or social mobility or even economic mobility, they tend to go towards these destructive behaviors. And that's what happens. You get greed, you get jealousy, you get competition. And that's why, in my opinion, humble opinion, nation states go bankrupt.
John, you must have something to add to that, because that's it's a pretty good subject.
It is. It really is. There's there's a lot of different aspects to it as well. Governments are broke. Governments don't produce anything. They don't create anything. They really only manage what's already existing, and then use it as leverage for other things that they want, whether it's making trades or something else, or fixing infrastructure, whatever it might be. So all they really have is the strength of the people and whatever maybe resources that the country has. And ultimately, I really don't see how by not having a gold-backed currency or some sort of commodity-backed currency, I don't see how they can avoid printing more money and more money and more money and more money, and just keeping the printers running until there's essentially nothing left and inflation just takes over, because they really don't have any choice, because there's nothing backing the currency that they're putting their signature on. I mean, Canada has a receiver general. So if Canada has a receiver general, the only reason why you would need a receiver is because Canada is in a trusteeship, and the receiver is acting as the trustee for a bankrupt corporation. So then if the corporation of Canada is bankrupt, or the government of Canada is bankrupt, then what money could they possibly have? Which means ultimately all they can do is print more and keep on keeping the money supply going, and keep turning out more bills and coins and other things that are backed by their own signature, until there's essentially not very much left. I mean, there's nothing backing anymore. And you end up with, say, what did we say, 1,000,000% inflation in Venezuela?
Yeah.
We're on our way there. I mean, they print money all day here. We have the biggest debt we've ever had in Canada. I mean, I've already heard that Canada is a bankrupted corporation.
Yep.
Tarek, what do you feel like we're headed for a $1 million inflation hike?
I don't think that it's going to happen as fast here as it did with the Bolivar, mainly because Venezuela does not have as many assets as Canada does. And you have to understand that Canada is right next to one of the most powerful nations on earth, which has the most assets in the world. So if you don't have assets, yes, you're going to go the way of Venezuela. And the reason for that, again, is that the assets are absorbing that market inflation. They're continuously absorbing that inflation. However, they can only absorb it so much. And so what happens is, when you cannot absorb that much money supply, then obviously you go the way of Venezuela. You don't have as many rich people. You don't have as many people who know how to read or write. You don't have that many people who even know how to write a check. And so what happens with that money is that it's not equally distributed among the people, and so you get a monstrous amount of inflation. And I'm not saying that things are any better in Canada. It's just that because of these assets that act as sponges, yes, it has been slow to a degree, but yes, it may happen actually.
Well, do you have anything to add to that, John? I mean, I know that's another big subject with the money printing, with the inflation on the rise, with the tripling that we're hearing that it's going to go. And we're not even going to be able to ever repay that $1 billion or $1 trillion some dollars. And what's even worse is, like, what happens to a country when they can't pay back their debt?
They might get invaded. They might just have to go through a Venezuelan crisis, or a Greece crisis, or a Cyprus crisis. And I mean, that's not something that I don't think anybody or any one of us really want to go through that. But there's only so many different places that printing printing currency can lead to, and that's definitely one of them. Because if the government has put the people into debt, if the government has used the people as collateral for the debt, then ultimately it's on the strength of the people. But if the people aren't happy with the government, then the people are not going to be interested in standing behind that debt or paying off that debt. And what's left? I mean, we got bread and circuses, like leads back into the question we were talking about before. Why don't they teach us stuff in school? Because they don't want you to know it, because they want to have ultimate authority to do essentially whatever they want. So they keep us dumbed down with bread and circuses and the public education system, and then we don't ever learn this stuff. We don't ever know how to manage money properly, so that we can keep ourselves away from debt and out of that debt cycle, so that we don't end up with a Venezuela situation.
Yeah, and to add to that, like the fact that we owe $1 trillion in a country with the oil reserves that we have and the very small population that we have with only 40 million Canadians, that's outstanding. That's an outstanding debt. Obviously poorly managed, obviously put in a place where they're going to control everything with the digital, cash flow. That's the digital currency. And now, where's the value going to be? Is there a way for us to save Canada in your opinion? Anybody can jump in on that one. That's a tough one, because value, we don't have any goal. We don't have any gold left here, right?
Well, to save Canada, you probably need people to be very, very well read, and you need people to be very knowledgeable about this kind of stuff. The national exchequer, as they call it. But I don't see that happening anytime soon. So Canada is really doomed to repeat the mistakes of the past, if we're being honest. I'm not holding my breath for a miracle either. So the only thing that I can see happening is that people create their own equity-based contracts and go on to a system that is a little bit more equitable than the current one. That's really how I see it.
Yeah.
That's a great answer. So for the audience, start building networks of relationships that you could, if anything hits the fan, if it goes wrong, if it goes sideways, which it will, in the direction it's going now, find the education you need. Follow our channel, because this is all we're going to talk about, is this education to everyone about being well read, well scripted, to be able to understand what it all means and how to put it all together. So how do you build value? Like what is important about, how do you define value? Other than just money is valuable and time is valuable. How do you define value? Maybe John, you're really good with, you're the wordsmith.
Well, I went looking for a definition, and I found a historic dictionary definition from the 1300s that defined value as price equal to the intrinsic worth of a thing, and a 14th century definition that was the degree to which something is useful or estimable. And from the old French word, worth, price, moral worth, standing, and reputation. So how can you build value? Stand on something. Having dollars in the bank account, or having, say, 2 houses and 4 different mortgages or something like that is not really value. Yes, you have a standing in, say, society, or you have a good credit score with the bank, but it's not necessarily value, because as soon as you do something like not pay your property taxes, all of a sudden it can be lost to you, whether the bank is satisfied or not. So adding value to something is more than just giving it a dollar value. I have value in the friendships that I have and the relationships that I've created, and even some of the material things that I have, but they have value to me, not necessarily to other people. I can't sell a friendship to somebody else, but I can make an agreement with that friend for a value exchange for something, and we both get to benefit from because of it. When we create value and add win-win to the contract, right?
Yeah,
I agree.
That's a great answer, by the way.
Yeah, very good.
Thanks.
Man, that's really valuable. Do you have anything to add to that, Tarek?
Well, just a couple of things, really. Although the answer is perfect, when we say value in the context of money, it has to have equity. And so when we say that two parties are agreeing to a transaction or a contract or an agreement, whatever that may be, that you define what is valuable in that exchange that is considered as value. Meaning, let's say that although having a great friend, having somebody who's got your back, that I think that has infinite value. I mean, you can't put a price tag on that. But in the context of money or a contract, you could say, well, I want to have something to the effect of this cell phone. I don't know if you guys can really see that really well. And, like, I will give you this cell phone along with a couple of other things that are super, super nice, and they come with it and as a package. And so that exchange in itself then holds that value, that it has a physical thing being exchanged. Now, it doesn't always have to be a physical thing. It could also be intellectual property. It can be intellectual property rights. It could be a declaration, even. Just a declaration itself could be valuable. For instance, we say that the a Bill of Rights and Freedoms in Canada holds some value, right? So in that context, we have an exchange taking place between the people who have written that Bill of Rights and then people who are accepting the Bill of Rights. Now, if I said, freedom of expression has no value to me because I live in a different set of mindset, whatever. Okay, well, that's not really a contract for me, but it's the contract for the rest of society, because the rest of society already agrees that freedom of expression, freedom of speech is one of the cornerstones of our society. It may not be for Canada, but definitely for the United States and other parts of the world. So yeah, I think that's what I could add. It really has to boil down to contracts that have equity, and then value exchange due to the nature of that contract.
Man, both are great answers. All I would have said for value, because for me personally, I'm not a historian, I'm not that knowledgeable about the thing. So thank you for all your answers. It's giving me lots of insight about money and value. What I found value, I mean, you've all heard this, the saying, your net work is your net worth. That means a lot to me because it's true. Sometimes when you go networking, you meet somebody, and it's not only them that you're meeting, it's also their network. So the more relationships you can build, and volunteer, do things that give values to other, there's no way you can lose that route with that route, because you're building value for yourself in those relationships. And when people trust you, they refer you, they introduce you to other peoples that trust them, and that's how you build a network, and that's how you build a net worth. So where I see value is more in relationships. You're seeing it in contracts, and I totally agree. I think we have to combine all of it together. That's my opinion. So is there any last words about what is money, value? Where like, what are the last final words that you want to say, Tarek, to the audience about the subject we talked about tonight?
Well, I really just want to say that don't let money be the beginning and the ending of your daily life. That's not what the purpose of money is. I know that people place a lot of value on money, and that is something that we need to take a second very hard look at. Yes, money is important. Yes, exchange of value is important. You must have equity in your contracts. You must have, just by nature, when you go out there, you get equity just by existing. I mean, it's so wonderful. But you have to understand that money, IOUs, promissory notes, stock markets, foreign exchange markets, these are not end all and be all for what we are doing here on this planet, on this beautiful planet. So try to understand what money is, and use the nature of money instead of the money itself, the concept of money to your advantage.
And how about for you, John? What are your last words to the audience about the subject matter today, about money, value, and contracts?
Yeah, I wanted to touch on that as well. I was driving around earlier today and happened to be behind somebody driving down the road, and it occurred to me that most of our contracts that we have, whether they're personal, well, some personal contracts, but in most cases, the government contracts. I was looking at this other driver that's in front of me, their license plate, and thinking, we reduced the license plate value to the cost of registration for the vehicle, which the vehicle has a cost to itself as well. The driver's license has a cost to it. The Alberta Traffic Safeties Act has a cost to it. And we attach all these different values to it, and people get very easily bogged down in the money aspect of the different contracts that they're in. And I think people need to realize that the money is not necessarily important. The value of the contract is important. If there's no value in the contract, then there has to be that equity that we were talking about before. And if there's no value in the contract, no equity in the contract, then the contract is either null and void or non-existent. Or it's not a contract; it's a one-sided demand, if you will, because equity under law is paramount. So people need to understand that they need value and equity, not necessarily money and currency. Because the money and currency come in the contract as needed, but they're not the basis for the contract. The other thing that I wanted to add is back to different places where you can get information about how money works or how currency works. I've actually found older versions of Black's Law Dictionary to be very helpful. My favorite are 4 and 5, but I've gone all the way back to the 1861 version of Bovier's Law Dictionary, just to find out more answers and find out all those different definitions, because over the last, say, 160 years, they've changed a lot of those definitions, and they kind of keep revolving, like some other words that we're all too familiar with. So if you can go back and find the definitions and find the true definitions, then use them in your contracts and use them in your affairs, really, then you'll have a basis for where to begin and where to look for other things that you're trying to find as well.
That's good knowledge, good feedback on value, money, contracts. For me, my final words would be to, invest in yourself. If you invest in yourself, educate yourself, learn skills, then you don't have to work for the man. You don't have to work for the government. You don't have to work at a job where they value you at 15, 20 bucks an hour. You will create your own business. I mean, educate yourself in learning how to form, to make your own business so you can contract with others at a much more valuable per hour, per contract basis. And that's way more valuable than just always, going through the educational system, getting out and making your $20 an hour. So that's my final words. Dear audience, thank you so much for joining us live for this podcast. Once again, for your reminder, if you wish to get a paid subscription to support our efforts, please check out the link in the description below, or check in the newsletter if you're already subscribed to it.